Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 2 of the Q&A, so let me get my hat on and let's knock this out. Alright, first question. As an intermediate lifter looking to cut 10 pounds of body fat, would you suggest trying to maintain strength in the 5 to 8 rep range, 1 to 3 sets per exercise, 3 days a week, or try your 7-week linear hypertrophy program? Your 12-week one seems a bit intense for me. Haha, thank you, sir. Alright, you're an intermediate lifter. Don't worry about progress when you cut. If you want to cut 10 pounds, spend 10 pounds cutting and maintaining. What you suggested there is kind of what I've already told people to do. It's kind of the sort of direction I personally have been going while losing body fat. I am down 21 pounds right now, maintaining my strength. Now, I'm an advanced lifter, but the fact of the matter is if you just continue to focus on maintaining your strength, not a big deal. A lot of people say, well, if you can gain strength, you should try. Well, maybe, but you don't necessarily need to. And what I mean is, if you lose your 10 pounds over the course of whatever, 5 weeks, 10 weeks, however you choose to do it, if you recomposition slightly because you keep doing the same weights, let's say for your squats you've been using, I don't know, 275 for that. For your deadlift, 400. For your overhead press, whatever, 155. For your work sets, and you're staying in that 5 to 8 rep range, and you spend that 5 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever it is that you need to lose that 10 pounds of body fat, if you continue to stay in that range, if you recomposition any, you will still get slightly stronger. You'll get slightly stronger while still doing the exact same stuff in the gym. But because if you did recomp or get any stronger, it will get slightly easier. It may impede your recovery less. It's going to be more manageable. So that when you do go back to maintenance calories, or even a very lean or clean bulk, you'll probably find that you'll make a little bit of progress. You'll actually be better off for it. The problem is that once you're out of the novice phase, trying to cut body fat and make gains is not only difficult, it can be difficult on your actual body. It can be problematic as far as recovery issues, fatigue issues. And when you're having fatigue issues and recovery issues when you're losing body fat, it will affect the rest of your life. It can affect your mood, it can affect your work performance, your school performance, everything else. Something you need to be aware of. That's why I recommend coasting and hoping to just maintain what you have while cutting so that it doesn't beat your recovery up. You have less injuries, less problems, and then it flows more smoothly when you transition back into maintenance calories again. Alright, next question. Hey Jason, found your videos a couple months ago and I've spent countless hours watching since. Keep it up. My question is, how difficult does progressive overload need to be in order to induce muscle growth? Let's say you performed an exercise for 5 reps to start, but with a weight you could have done 8 to 10. Would adding weight or reps slowly workout to workout induce muscle growth because of doing more work, or not because of ease at which it's performed? Just curious how close overload needs to correlate with RPE in order to produce results. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you. The thing is, I wouldn't worry about it that much. Yeah, if you take your 8 rep max and you do 5 rep sets with it and you increase it over time, as you increase over time, you will start to see muscle growth and strength gains again, even if your RPE stays relatively low. Obviously, that's not a high RPE to do that, but you don't have to actually have a high RPE to see gains. So RPE up to about RPE 9 can induce gains on its own. All right, that's the difference, because we are talking about mechanical tension increases, things like that. High RPEs tend to cause gains in muscle growth almost irrespective of volume and things. Volume and workload, increased workload, work irrespective of RPE. So kind of a difference of understanding that. So RPE, you could keep at RPE 7 or 8 and make continual progress. The issue is that when we go to higher RPEs is that we start working into stuff like dual factor recovery models. For people who don't want to have to deload, they don't want to have to push forward and then back off, push forward and then back off. Actually, the other method, just a straight, slow, linear type progression, actually works, and you'll gain muscle mass and strength just fine. You can do that without ever going within 2 reps of failure. Right, so you could take an 8 rep max and do 5 rep sets with it indefinitely and continue to make progress. It's that when we stall is usually because we're sometimes exceeding our RPE or we're trying to over push by overreaching too far and then not recovering sometimes. It's kind of a tricky balance. I don't know if I'm explaining that ideally, but in other words, to answer your question simply, yes, you could just slowly increase from there and never get within 1 rep of muscle failure and make continual progress. But again, keep in mind, progress will always be slower and slower as you go, no matter what method you use. So don't expect to, in the 3rd year of doing this to make the same gains you made in the 1st, but that's true of anything else. But yeah, you can always maintain slow progress over time, even while maintaining a fairly low RPE, as long as progressive overload is present and enough total workload is present. All right, next question. Jason, I've lost 25 pounds on this cut and I've gotten somewhat weaker. Bench has gone down 15 pounds. Bent over rows is down 30 pounds. Will my strength come back if I maintain my weight, or will I have to gain some back? Hard to say. You're talking about pretty significant hits in strength. Some of that may or may not return at maintenance calories. Just something to keep in mind. Sometimes your loss of strength can be due to recovery, lack of training fuel. In some cases, it's a lack of muscle mass. And so if you're losing strength due to not being able to maintain muscle due to cutting too aggressively, too quickly, or just getting too lean for your personal body, it will not return until you regain the muscle. If you're losing muscle mass. But a lot of times, like I said, it's just due to under-recovery. If it's due to under-recovery, slightly depleted glycogen stores, when you return to maintenance calories, it will slowly come back up. So it's kind of hard to say because, again, you're not saying how lean you've gotten, what sort of weights you're lifting, how aggressive you've been cutting, and that's the other thing to consider. When cutting aggressively, it can be the combination of both fatigue, lack of fuel, and loss of muscle mass. So again, it just depends on how much of it is due to loss of muscle and how much of it is due to temporary factors such as pushing too hard. But the thing I will say, if you're losing significant amounts of strength in the gym when you are cutting, it's time to reassess how many carbs you're eating, how many calories you're eating, how fast you're cutting, and maybe look back at fatigue management of how hard are you pushing with the weights? Were you just trying to maintain, or were you pushing too hard and then speeding up your regression due to excessive fatigue starting to mount due to trying to train too hard without enough energy to fuel it and without enough energy to recover from it? So a lot of factors to look at there. All right, next question. Hi Jason, does it matter when you go to sleep if it's 8+ hours? Is the time of day non-regulatory in the circadian rhythm, and whether there are any sources of light when you sleep have any noticeable effects on recovery and hormones? What will waking up a couple of times or hitting the snooze button? This almost deserves its own video. Short answer, snooze buttons do not help you in any way. There's been research on that over the years that I'm aware of. Hitting the snooze button because you're getting a hard wake up from an electronic device, the extra time you get from the snooze button doesn't count towards your sleep. In other words, a person who sleeps 6 hours and hits the snooze button 6 times to get 7 hours only got 6 hours of sleep. That last hour didn't do anything as far as their recovery and rest goes. It was completely worthless. They would have been better off and gotten more sleep if they just get rid of the snooze button completely. The snooze button is actually the worst thing you could do for recovery. And just woke up at the time that they've been using the snooze button to get to. That's when they should just set their alarm and not hit the snooze button. As far as the other stuff goes, yeah, the amount of light you're subjected to matters. Shift work has been shown to give inferior hormone profiles in people. It can affect recovery from exercise. The only way you might get around that is to put blackout curtains and stuff in your room so that when you sleep, if you are sleeping during non-regular hours, that you sleep in a pitch black room with no sunlight coming through, and you might be okay in that case. All right, next question. Jason, do you think of local fat surgery can remove my love handles completely? I've gone a bit fluffy in the past year, and I have bad genetics towards storing a lot of fat in my love handles. Even when I was 10% in shape, I had them, and I have a big glutes and waist. My question is, if I do the surgery and diet down, will they be removed completely because the surgery destroys the actual fat cells? Yeah, fat cells that are removed with liposuction, when they suck it out, those fat cells are permanently gone. Now, keep in mind, you will still have a few fat cells there, and if you get fat enough, some of those fat cells will multiply. All right, they will multiply to replace them, but the odds, and unless you get really fat, like I'm talking gaining 20, 30, 40 pounds of fat again, it's very unlikely that you'll see a significant fat return in the area that you liposuction down very lean if you were already decently lean when you started. Meaning, in other words, they get more fat cells the leaner you are, because each fat cell is smaller, and if they're going to take out a certain amount of volume there, it's semi-permanent, yeah. Yeah, and that has been noted by a lot of actors, a lot of models, and everyone over the years who does that. So it is a viable method for certain people who want to make their living in that. I mean, to the point where even someone like me who's a YouTuber, in fact, a lot of YouTubers may go that route purely for that reason, that those areas won't return so much as long as they got decently lean, got them sucked out and did their thing. That's actually common in bodybuilding, men's physique, bikini competitors. A lot of people actually do go that route. They just don't always brag about it publicly, but it's pretty common. And yeah, it does semi-permanently remove those regions. You can force it to some extent, but it will never be as bad as it previously was, because there is permanent removal of cells. All right, next question. In one of your recent training videos, you said on a cut, pressing strength is the first thing to go. Any scientific explanation of this, or just something you have noticed? It's something I've noticed. It's something a lot of coaches, a lot of powerlifters, everyone have noticed, and there is research that shows pressing strength, particularly the bench press, is more strongly correlated to body weight than the squat and the deadlift, right? There's less of a structural component in your body to a lot of pressing strength. So what does tend to happen, you do lose more pressing strength than structural based, like axial loading type exercises, when you're losing weight. There is a strong correlation there. And it's not to say that some people don't lose more on their deadlift or squat when they're cutting. Some people do, but the majority of people tend to lose more on their pressing strength, and pressing strength is more strongly correlated to body weight than most other forms of exercise. And there's data on that out there. If you dig around and look for it, there have been studies done on that showing the correlations between some of these big lifts versus body weight, and pressing strength, particularly the bench press, seems to be very heavily correlated with body weight for a number of different reasons. So I kept that one brief. All right, next question. Is it true that a pound of fat equals 3,500 calories? Yeah. That doesn't mean that a 3,500 calorie deficit is going to guarantee exactly 1 pound of fat loss, because there's different things going on. There's muscle glycogen, there's fat, muscle tissue, all sorts of other stuff. But yes, if we were to just take the raw value of it, just like we know the caloric value of gasoline, we know the caloric value of diesel, we know the energy values of different substances. A pound of body fat in a human has around 3,500 calories. That's what our fat has in terms of caloric value. And is it a ballpark to say that roughly a 3,500 calorie deficit over time is going to equal roughly a pound of fat loss? Yeah, it's not going to be exact, because there are a lot of other efficiency factors and other stuff going on there, nutrient partitioning. So that's only a ballpark in regards to that. But yes, that is the actual caloric value. If you were to just suck that out of the body and measure it, put it in a blast furnace, it will have 3,500 calories. That's correct. All right, next question and last question of the week. Is bulletproof coffee actually healthy? No, it's stupid. It's one of the most stupid, moronic things anyone has ever come up with. It's even for people doing ketogenic diets. The whole point of a ketogenic diet is appetite suppression, right? So you're going to convert your coffee into liquid fat by melting butter in it. Furthermore, saturated fat is a fat that we need to moderate no matter what sort of diet you do. Butter is fairly nutritionally void. There's not a lot of beneficial nutrients in butter. There's some, but calorie for calorie, it's not that great. It's over 50% saturated fat by calorie. Dairy fat and heavy cream is very concentrated saturated fat, and probably one of the biggest causes of cardiovascular disease in the Western world. And I'm not saying all dairy is bad. A lot of dairy, particularly low-fat dairy, fat-free dairy, has fantastic health benefits. Cultured dairy has all sorts of health benefits. Butter, you're losing most of the health benefits. You're losing the quality proteins, you're losing the calcium, losing the magnesium, and you're just getting the fat, and you're adding a bunch of salt to the fat. That's what butter is. So dropping butter, In fact, I would say to most people, if overall health, cardiovascular disease, fat loss, everything is your goal, quit putting butter on your food in general. And no, margarine is worse. But it's kind of like, you know, I would look at it this way. I'm going to give you guys an extreme example. It's kind of like if you decide you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, you wouldn't go, well, butter isn't as bad as margarine, so I'm going to use that. So it's not as bad to shoot yourself in the foot with a 22 as it is a 45, and that is true. But it's also better to just not shoot yourself in the foot. Yeah, you could use a smaller bullet and it's going to make a smaller hole, just like butter isn't as bad as margarine. But you could also not use either one, just like you could also not shoot yourself in the foot at all. That's probably the wiser choice. Drink your coffee without butter. I don't care what sort of diet you follow. It's just beyond fucking retarded. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.